Hi, everyone, and welcome to Joellen McCarthy's session on Hybrid or Home, Harnessing the Power of Read Alouds. I am so happy to be a little guest introducer in here because while I want you to know that this session is going to be amazing, I also just wanted to shout out the book birthday of Joellen's brand new book, Layers of Learning. There it is. My copy's in the mail, and apparently Joellen said it may be arriving today even, is what the publisher says. So she held it up. Can you hold it up again? So
Sure.
this book, which some of this session will also refer to this text as well. If you know Joellen, which is probably why you're here because you know her and you know she's amazing, but if you know Joellen, Joellen is full of love and energy for education, for reading, for readers, and for teachers and students. And that book is an incredible gift to everyone. I was lucky enough to read an advanced version of it just before it went to print. And I'll tell you somehow, and I don't know how you did this, Joellen, somehow Joellen took her tremendous book knowledge and teaching with books knowledge and put it into this incredible text that will be a huge help to all of you. It's broken up into two parts. Part one gives you lots of in-depth thinking around texts and the ways that you can help them explore community and identity, and helps you think about the kinds of text choices that you make, how you use them in your classroom. And then part two completely and absolutely blew my mind because somehow I don't know how you did it, and also just blessings to you and to your editor for finding the structure for it. Joellen's part two is this extremely practical, here are some books, here's some things you can do with the books, here's some structures and ideas. It's jam-packed with ways of using text and really great text that you can use with your students for a wide variety of reasons. It's like page after page after page of pure gold. So first, congratulations to you, Joellen, and your brand new book. And congratulations to all of you that you get to sit with Joellen during this session to learn from her about ways that regardless of where you are, and she and I started before this, both venting and having hope in our hearts around what all of us are doing right now. But whether you are hybrid or home, however you're teaching your students, however students are learning right now, this session is sure to help you with it. So enjoy learning with Joellen. Joellen, enjoy this session, and congratulations again on your incredible book.
Thank you so much, Chris. I'm super excited. I'm excited about the session. I'm excited about the work we're doing at the Educator Collaborative. And I'm really thrilled about the vision and voice of students in here. So beyond the text, it's really about how using text has given me the opportunity, and it's filled with experiences from real kids, real classrooms that demonstrate the ways that Read Alouds has really been able to lift the level of our thinking, our reading, our writing, and I'm thrilled to share that with the readers. So
It's such a gift. Enjoy.
thank you. So I'm really excited to get to share with you my thinking around the power of Read Alouds. For many of you who know me and know the work that I do as the Educator Collaborative Book Ambassador, or just as a very nerdy teacher, I truly believe that books are my co-teachers. If we were together in a space where we would have the opportunity to engage in conversation, to reflect and have questions and share our ideas, I might ask you something like, what are your beliefs about Read Alouds? And I know we're not live right now, but I hope that you will share your thinking with me, because that's how we grow, that's how we learn, that's how we become more human, when we share our thinking and we share our learning together. Books help us do that. I truly believe books are the most powerful tool that we can bring into the classroom. And this thinking behind books, specifically picture books, I clearly have an obsession with picture books, because I think that there's power in using a picture book to talk about reading, writing, and life lessons. And so today, in part of our time together, I'd like to invite you into some of the thinking and some of the work that I've done in schools based on this obsession with picture books, based on this opportunity to use Read Alouds as my co-teachers. So I'm going to share the screen a little and do some thinking with you now. And as I said, please tweet along with us today, share your thoughts, use the hashtag the EdCollab Gathering, or tweet me or email me, and let's grow together around these ideas. So in thinking about Read Alouds, one of the things that I think is often an issue in school is that we tend to separate things, right? And today, more than ever, we need to be connected. And books can help us to be connected in a way, whether it's across a screen or huddled together over the pages of a book or in a conversation. Books can really allow us to bridge and really build community. And community isn't just about those physical spaces and places. Community is about the mutual respect we have for one another, the sharing of ideas, the learning about one another, the opportunity to question ideas, to also celebrate who we are, where we're from, and to just learn from one another. Books give us those opportunities. So if we think about that and we think about, rather than isolating things, rather than separating what we're going to do during reading workshop or during writing workshop, or for this moment of, I hate to say moment because SEL is so important, but I think it's kind of becoming like a buzz term, rather than thinking about the extension of the conversations we're having across the day that have to go on regardless of a moment or a period to talk about SEL. It's life work, and books help us do that life work. When we can question, talk back, speak to authors, or I say speak to authors, speak about the work that authors have done, how they've influenced us in our thinking, in our reading, in our writing. That's the kind of work that I believe is heart work. And books are the tools and the vehicles to be able to have those conversations. So if we go back to that screen for a moment, and we look at some of the expectations with books in connecting this idea to SEL, a really simple way, I think, is to talk about how when we read something, we gain new information, or we validate something, or we question our beliefs, and we have this knowledge that's in our head because of a story, because of a book, because of an experience with text. And then that knowledge can get translated into a feeling, how we respond to that text, that character, that situation, or that information. And essentially then what we do with that information and how we expand on that and how we then act on what we've learned, what we've felt, that becomes the doing, right? So it's this knowing, feeling, doing. And books help us to build across the texts this opportunity for essentially feeding three birds with one hand. So rather than thinking about, oh, I'm going to read a book and I'm going to do this during reading workshop and then put that book away, and then during writing workshop pick up another book and talk about a particular craft lesson, I really tend to think about the ways that we can really build on ideas across text. Read Routman talks about how we should explore the reciprocity of reading and writing because they're two processes that nourish each other. And that's what I think books can do. Books can help nourish our heads, our hearts, and our hands. And so when we think about this idea, whether we're hybrid or home, if we can truly tap into this opportunity to expand the ways in which we use books, I think our thinking together grows. I think our understanding and our knowledge grows. And certainly I hope our humanity and our hearts grow, because it's not just about growing skills, it's about growing hearts. Now more than ever, we need to do this work. There's so much sadness, there's so much insanity, there's so much that continues to be wrong in our world. And I think in our small communities, what we can do through the power of Read Alouds is really astonishing. If we can invite those possibilities through how we use books, I think we can find some more hope in our world. So let's talk a little bit about some of the ideas and some of the beliefs I have based on my experience in working with kids and using books as my co-teachers. So I want to talk a little bit about the ways that reading aloud helps us be together. Again, whether it's physically together or over technology, through Zoom, through Google Classrooms, through some of our remote learning experiences, the ways that we use stories can really, really be an amazing, powerful tool. So think about this. books help us create bonds. We're shared moments together. It's those memories and moments through books. So here you see two examples in classrooms that I'm privileged and honored to work in. One is a pre-K classroom with students. Obviously that was taken in the spring, in the early spring, before we were given, COVID disaster protocols, and we had to actually remove ourselves. And on the right is a classroom example with one of my colleagues, Roderick Peel, from the Great Northern Parkway, where we've worked and continue to work in Zoom settings, working with kids and sharing stories, and using those opportunities to bring us together to create those book bonds, but then to go on into how to look at the same story after a morning meeting that brings us together and helps us build community, how we can use that same story to complement the existing units of study we're doing in reading and writing workshop, or even more powerful, how we can use those stories to connect with kids around their specific needs, whether that's academic needs or affective needs. How are we balancing those social emotional learning goals with our academic goals through stories? That's the question I pose to you, because it can be done with a book. If we think about what's going on in our worlds right now, and we think about the importance, the essence of what we do as teachers, it's about life work. And so we must, through Read Alouds and through our teaching, create a space that allows for conversations where we're using stories to be more inclusive, to think about how we can be more anti-racist and separate and really elevate the conversations we're having around biases and experiences that perhaps we've been for far too long, those difficult conversations have maybe been put aside, right? And this needs to be everyday work. How are we using books? How are we using the stories that we share to really honor the voices? One of my favorite examples comes from a school that I work in, where at MLK, where this is on the halls and walls. As soon as you walk in, you can see this sign everywhere, right? We're talking about how we're celebrating history, not just Black history. And so when we use stories and when we use books, it's not Black History Month or Latinx History Month or any celebration that becomes a hero holiday kind of moment. It's the ongoing thinking through stories that helps us to share and celebrate voices and experiences and really look at the accomplishments and the joys of everyday life for our Black and brown children, for all children. And we need to use books in this way, use stories in this way to address privilege, power, racism, and also, again, that everyday joy through story. So when I think about Read Alouds and harnessing the power of Read Alouds, I'm going to share some examples with you that demonstrate this thinking and this work. But I have a little caveat, and that is beyond Bookless. I have often been in company with teachers where they'll say, oh, what is that book that you have? Or maybe you're looking right now and you're saying, oh, what is that book on Joellen's shelf right now behind her? And oh, I need that book. And I would like you to consider instead of thinking about how I need that book, to think more broadly about how I need books that. And one of the things that I like to talk about with teachers is, again, community, agency, respect, empowerment. How are we using books in those ways so that we can really help build our students' capacity in terms of learning as life work? That life work, that heart work. What stories? What's the story that's going to be the just right story in the just right moment? So perhaps you might look at the shelf behind me and see something that catches your eye. Don't worry, we're going to look at bookshelves and virtual bookshelves in a moment. But I want to just mention the importance of thinking beyond Bookless to just the opportunity to research, read, repeat, research, yes, books, but more importantly, research kids, research the world, think about what's going on and what stories we can bring into our classrooms in whatever form that may take, so that we can have these conversations to inspire kids to be more critical thinkers, to be more compassionate, caring community members. So let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. Few tips. I use the term heartprint books. I actually wrote a post for Nerdy Book Club many years ago, which was about the importance of looking at books and the authors who leave those prints on our heart. They leave those marks on our heart. We can't stop thinking about them, right? But we have to consider Louise Rosenblatt's transactional theory, because the reader writes the story. So I would never assume to say, this is the book that's going to be your heartprint book. I want to engage teachers and kids in the conversations about which books they're reading or which books they've been read to that have stories that touch their hearts and their minds. Because perhaps, as Rudine Sims Bishop has taught us, we've thought about a book that's been a mirror, a window, or a sliding glass door. Or perhaps it's a book that has been one that gives us an opportunity to really better manage our emotions and think through the feelings that we're having. How can we use books to help us be more self-aware about our feelings, or perhaps the feelings of the characters that we're reading about? What conflicts, what decisions, what choices have they made? And how can we analyze those to impact the way that we think and view what's going on in the world? Or perhaps it's a story that just feels right and necessary in the moment. These are just some tips, some ways that I talk through finding a heartprint book, choosing and selecting a heartprint book. But you'll notice in that image that I have BYOB, and BYOB stands for Bring Your Own Book, because I hope that it's this collaborative nature of conversations and how we can share our experiences, our perspectives, our point of view, and how that influences the books that we choose, the books that we need to have, the books that perhaps we have problems with, because that's, again, how we grow in sharing those conversations. So we're going to talk a little bit more about some of these ideas, some tips that I hope that you will find will influence the work that you do. And I just want to pause for a moment and think about this idea again. I'm not trying to say you shouldn't get a book recommendation from someone. I think we all seek reading advisors to help us to curate and grow our selections and to build our stack. But more important than the books we choose is how we use them. So I'll tell you a little quick story. I was working with a group of fifth graders, and I shared a book that had a wonderful example of different family structures. And after sharing that text, we talked about, central message and theme and what we thought the author was trying to tell us. And one student asked me if I was going to read that book to everyone in the building. And I said, well, I would love to, but today I'm here visiting, X, Y, Z classes and this grade level, but maybe when I come back, I can visit several rooms. I'm curious why you asked that. And his response was, because if we read books like that more often, people might be less judgy. I thought that was so beautiful, and out of the mouths of babes, right? So what books are we using? How are we taking the opportunity through powerful read alouds to explore family structures, to look at a variety of identities, to affirm a variety of voices, languages, and experiences? That's really our responsibility as educators. And so, again, going back to some examples and some ideas, I want to share with you some of my thinking and some of the ideas that I've explored through layers of learning. So there's something that I like to call the heartprint framework, right? And so this is just a bit of a structure, and I kind of alluded to this before. I start with a read aloud so that we have a book bond or an experience. And that can be a morning meeting, kind of responsive classroom atmosphere, could be at the same time every day, like we can check in before lunch or after lunch. Oftentimes that morning meeting or that heart start is the best time of day to do this work. And that's where we have the opportunity to have discussion. And we have life layers. We have opportunities to look at how that book has maybe raised questions, concerns, connections. In fact, I talk a little bit about the 3 C's: connections, cares, and concerns, because oftentimes kids make connections, but they tend to make those connections. And, Chris Tavani would say in her infinite wisdom that we have to get kids to go past the so what connections, right? So if we shift a little and we talk more about cares and concerns, we have an opportunity for kids to then think about the ways in which those stories will influence them, because those connections, cares, and concerns start to grow our hearts a little more than just our reading and writing skills. So that morning or initial life layer discussion possibility is how we start with a book, right? Again, notice I'm not saying use this book to do this. I'm trying to give you an idea about how to really harness the power of read alouds. Start with a story, that shared story that brings us together. And then we can explore those reading writing connections. That same book can be revisited during reading workshop or during writing workshop. And then we can have the opportunity to then think about ways to extend the conversation beyond the book, to literacy snapshots, the halls and walls that teach. How are kids then responding to that text, maybe through art, maybe through their own examples of poetry or visual demonstration, and variety of examples that I'll show you in a moment. And then continue even further thinking about ongoing conversations. Can we thread the stories that we use into a connected conversation? Not a thematic unit, but if we look at one book, how does that book help us grow our ideas? Can we look at another book to then expand or perhaps challenge the ideas that were presented to us in a story? And then we can continue the connections by thinking about some ongoing work as literacy leaders, right? Thinking about professional connections for other resources. Perhaps it's an article, a TED Talk, or something that really can help extend the learning that we do so that our kids then can become stronger in their own learning. Really, we need teachers and students to be learners equally. So I want to share with you a couple of other examples, and then I'll get to, I know everybody's like, get to a book, Joellen. This is the longest I've ever gone without talking about a title, right? So when we think about, I said the 3 C's, just food for thought, you know, those connection, cares, and concerns, this is a really great opportunity then to work in small groups, perhaps a Zoom group breakout or a Google Classroom breakout small room, which we're anxiously awaiting. How can we have students lead the conversation, right? So these groups are led by students because of what they discuss, what their concerns are. So this example comes from Trouble Talk, and Trouble Talk is a book by Trudy Ludwig. And in Trudy's book, she addresses gossip and that whole harmful talk that kids have. And so when kids are thinking about that, they often will make a connection. Oh yeah, I remember the time when blah, blah, blah. But we want them to go a little deeper. We want them to think about how it's not just about that connection, but it's about what did they care about from that story or from that experience? And what are they concerned about? What are they worried about? So we're getting kids to think critically in terms of their worries, their fears, as they're looking at text. Not just, you know, oh, here's a story and there's a beginning, middle, and end, there's a problem, there's a solution, but what about all the other problems like that are lying within stories that really lead to the life lessons that we can find based on real examples from real kids? And that's why I love using picture books, because we can find so many powerful picture books to do this work. So I want to talk a little bit about what a current shelf might look like for me, right? So, and now everybody's like, we see a shelf behind you, Joellen. Of course you do. But those books and those co-teachers are changing based on what the conversations we're having, what the moment is bringing to us, right? So for example, right now, the moment that is so fresh in my mind is the importance of amplifying the voices and celebrating the lives of Black and Brown children. So I have a few books by some authors that some are new and some are authors who are friends, and some are also some older texts to kind of introduce the conversation of perspective and point of view and thinking about how everyone views books differently. So if we look at I Am America, this is a book by Charles Smith Jr. And if we click on this, and yes, you could see I have my little virtual library inspired by friends like Claire Landrigan. And if you want to know more about how to set up a virtual library, Claire has tons of great resources, not only on setting up, but in curating shelves for yourself. And what I love about doing this work is SLJ has put out the publisher's policies, which I will attach and share in the resources. And really, publishers have been so extremely generous in providing the opportunity for teachers to be able to talk about and read aloud books and record for classroom use. So I would just ask that as you create your own virtual libraries, you're mindful of that. You think about the SLJ requirements, think about the opportunities to, you know, start curating your list, share with one another. Like if you have 5 teachers on a grade level, everybody can take a few books that they would record or find the resources for and share that and curate your list. But more for that, we could do another whole day just on virtual libraries. So back to my friend Charles Smith Jr. You'll notice the book I Am America here. And I did put either direct links with permissions from the authors themselves to these resources or the publishers. And so in I Am America, this comes to mind because if we want to talk about mutual respect, we want to talk about building and valuing where we are all from and who we are, this is a beautiful, beautiful text. So I'm going to share this video with you from Charles doing the read aloud. Ready? Here we go. Here we go, said Joellen. Hold on, pause, please. It's not working. Oh, there it is.
I am America. I am proud. I am diverse, soft-spoken, and loud. I am almond eyes. I am a proud nose. I am cheeks freckled, the color of a rose. I am jet black hair. I am olive skin. I am my grandfather's dimples, framing my grin. I am big baggy jeans. I am bandana wraps. I am blue denim jackets. I am backwards baseball caps. I am rhythm. I am blues. I am country. I am soul. I am jazz. I am hip hop. I am grunge, rock and roll. I am candy cane sticks. I am ice cream smiles. I am lollipop licks. I am warm apple pie. I am Catholic, Protestant, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Mormon, Quaker, Amish. I am Asian, Italian, Indian, Irish, Greek, Latino, African, Polish. I am a new branch sprouting in my majestic family tree. I am America, and America is me. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you check out the book. You can find it available for purchase on my website through IndieBound. You can also buy it at any local bookstore.
We'll share Charles's resources and ways in connecting with Charles as well after. But I just love that book so much because of the affirmations, and it reminds me of I Am Every Good Thing, which is Derek Barnes' new book that's also on my shelf behind me and on my virtual shelf. And I think this opportunity to really celebrate and give kids affirmations for who they are and where they're from is at the foundation. And with every read aloud that we share like this, it's brick by brick, story by story, we're strengthening the foundation for our community of learners. And we can only control what we can control in our rooms, right? That's a place to start. And then hopefully the ripple effect of book love and the experiences and the conversations that we're having will go beyond our classroom walls. That's the goal of all of this, right? So thinking about some more resources and ideas and thinking about ways that we can use read alouds, a few additional ideas. On my shelf, you'll notice Your Name is a Song. And Your Name is a Song is a beautiful book that is by Jamila Tompkins Bigelow. And in her book, she talks about how a little girl goes to school and she's very upset because her teacher does not pronounce her name the right way. And it's a beautiful story that really celebrates names and talks about how every name is a song. And Jamila, on that shelf of mine that I just shared with you, and you will see in the resources, you could click on to see Jamila talk about how to pronounce the names, and just she talks when she does this about how important it is to, get names right. And we know this is a time of year we're getting to know who our kids are. We're asking them to tell us the story of our names, which is the reading writing connection. They could write the story of their names. But what I love about the video that Jamila does is that she smiles so brightly with every name that she pronounces. And we had a conversation, Jamila and I, we were doing a project and something else together, and she mentioned how she had to stop and pause and go back because she said every name deserves a smile. And I just thought that whole idea of universal smiles and universal languages and culture and celebrating cultures and individuals is something we all know, right? But to have an example like that to share with kids, because it's not just the books, it's how we use them. It's talking about the mentor text, who they are, the voices of those authors and illustrators, bringing their lives and their stories into our classroom. That elevates this work. So I'm so appreciative to authors like Jamila Tompkins Bigelow and others like Charles Smith Jr. and many, many, many authors who gift us with their talents and then provide these additional resources. So if we go back really quickly to look at that shelf, just so you can see, if you click on any one of those, you'll get to either a video like Christian Robinson reading You Matter, or Tammy Charles talking about her experience in writing All Because You Matter, and a new book that I absolutely love by Meg Medina and illustrated by Sonia Sanchez is Evelyn Del Rey is Moving Away. So I want to just share that with you for a quick second, because what I love about this book is it centers the language practices of bilingual students. And there's an opportunity to see how even just bringing a book in the classroom and talking about this is not an issue book about someone who's bilingual, speaks in multiple languages. It's a beautiful story about two girls who are friends and one has to move away. And the text just has an example of translanguaging that celebrates that. And so I can just read one page to you. Evelyn Del Rey is my mejor amiga, my numero uno best friend. Come play, Daniela, she says, just like she always does, just like today is any other day. But of course, today's not any other day because Evelyn Del Rey is moving away. So again, if we think about using Read Alouds to manage emotions and feelings, to share those memories and moments, it becomes a great tool for writing workshop. But think about all that it does to celebrate linguistic practices too. So books, Read Alouds, there's so many endless possibilities. And I hope that as we're sharing some of these ideas, as we're looking at text, as we're thinking about the ways that we can add life layers and literacy snapshots and extend the conversations, you'll grow and share your ideas with me. On that note, I have a few more examples, and then we can look at some other friends who've given us some resources. So I have an example from the text, which shares a story from Anjali, Always Anjali, which is a book that came out about a year or two ago about a young Indian girl who's very upset, oh, here it is, because she cannot find a name tag. And in the book, just so you can see, if we talk about this idea of the portions of, you know, this heart print, we have life layers, again, talking about story of our names. We have an opportunity for reading, writing connections and looking at some of the text in here. Like there's a part where Anjali talks about how she blinks back tears and she's so upset. Or this page, which is such a brilliant example of a child being, I mean, it's sad, but it's a real clear example of the craft lessons and the fluency in your voice as a reader when you think about how she's being taunted for her name. And this mean boy is saying, peanut butter and jelly, peanut butter and jelly. And you could see that, which then becomes something that kids can, you know, reflect on for the life lessons, but go back in their own writing and think about the ways that they could perhaps play with the font or the word choice to demonstrate what a character was thinking or feeling, or how they were saying something, which influences character traits too, right? So many great opportunities, but think about it. It's not about the book. It's about the ways that we use the books. So I shared Your Name is a Song. It's not in the book, but it's a way to think about names, community, identities. And I'm sure there's tons of other texts out there that you're using, heart print texts to you that I don't know about, and I would love to hear about. So let's think about how we can continue to share, and let's think about the ways we can grow those ideas. So how about this? More literacy snapshots with names. Are we thinking about the ways that younger children perhaps can learn letter sounds or celebrate their individuality, and also at the same time learn how letters make certain sounds. So if you think about a child, if you look at the list, Bentley and Brittany, it's two different colors because Bentley makes one initial sound with that B, but Brittany has a different sound. So therefore Brittany's a different color. Or Brandon, if you could see from a different class example. Or how about when you think about kids who are learning letter sounds, younger children, and thinking about the power of read alouds and connecting to a literacy snapshot. If I look at a chart and I am learning English as a second language and I see a picture of a dog and I speak Spanish perhaps, and I say dog, 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 but in my head I'm thinking pero, pero, pero. Those two things don't connect. But if I know my friends' names like Diego or Derek, I can then think about making those connections. So just a little sidebar about the importance of thinking across texts for reading, writing, and life lessons. And those literacy examples exist all the time. So it's just a matter of taking those and extending across our day how we can then build on what we know as readers and writers, and then think about, again, the opportunity to inspire kids to have more caring conversations at the same time. So a few more examples. I wish we were live because I'd be stopping and asking questions. I'm so used to having authors I was gonna say sponsor, but co-present. I usually have an author and illustrator guest, but I wanted the work to be the guest, the student work that I'm sharing, and the examples of text. So when we read aloud, we can also connect art and activism. And you can see the book Limitless is a favorite that has a variety of examples of really creative artwork demonstrating some powerful women in our history, things that they have done through art and words and images, which I absolutely love because it's really a great way for synthesizing research and information. And so here Kaylee did that with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She took the same concept of, you know, keywords and phrases and quotes and dates and shared her example of understanding after that read aloud. And then we have some other examples of art inspiring the work with some primary students looking at the work of Romero Brito. And you could click on any of the links or look at the QR code if you want to connect more art stories to your read alouds and kind of layer the work. You know, my friend Kristen Zemke, friends I should say, and Katie Maharis, they wrote a book called Read the World. And one of the things they talk about, which I think really complements this idea of the power of read alouds, is finding not just text sets, but tech sets. And that's really important. So if we're talking about friends, I have one more friend that I want to share. She wrote a book called En Comunidad with her partner, her writing partner. And I'm privileged to share a little piece on read alouds from Carla Espana. So here we go. Here's words from Carla. I say here we go. It always takes a minute. Hold on a second. Okay. There we go.
Read alouds have been a way to build and create community in my work, whether I'm with children or with adults in teacher preparation programs. And so through read alouds, we've been able to get to know the experiences of others where we may have felt alone. We no longer feel alone as we read about stories of characters and people throughout history that, especially those that we were never taught of in school. And so I've had many experiences and continue to have them, especially now that the semester started for me with undergraduates and graduate students, where we've had moments that we had never learned about people in history, especially Black, Brown, Indigenous change makers, those who have affected our society, like Arturo Schomburg and Buda Beribre, and really been considering a lot the power of read alouds to unlearn and to bring in these counter narratives into our midst, into our lives, so that we can pass these stories along to our friends, to other children in our work. Read alouds not only help us build and create community and do a lot of the unlearning and learning of counter narratives, but also Read Alouds have allowed us the space to just be ourselves and to see that we can identify with these characters. And like so much of the work of Rudine Sims Bishop has taught us that in these books we have mirrors, and a lot of students, especially Black and Brown and Indigenous children, have lacked these mirrors for some time. And I've seen the power of Read Alouds to really create a space where children no longer feel like they're alone in this journey. But Read Alouds have also been a way for us to look at language practices and to look at how we see authors use their whole linguistic repertoire in their writing, whether it's Tracy Sorrell's We Are Grateful, whether it is a book that has Spanish and English and uses translanguaging throughout. It's been one of the most beautiful experiences to read these books with children and see their faces light up because they say, like, oh, that's how we talk at home. So in a lot of bilingual communities and schools in New York City that I've worked with for years, using these books and these Read Alouds as mentor texts for their own writing. And so not only to see these realities reflected in the books, but also to have them there as our writing partners. And so Read Alouds have been a really powerful way, not only to get to know stories, but also to inspire our own writing. And finally, in the collaboration I had with Dr. Luz Yadira Herrera, my friend and co-author for our book En Comunidad, we really focused on the power of Read Alouds to launch not only our own study with children on our families, our cultures, our traditions, specifically with bilingual Latinx children that we focused on in the book, but also the power of those Read Alouds to launch the kind of work that will take us to have conversations about these topics with those around us. And so we really anchor our work with Read Alouds in creating these conversations with our friends and with our families about stories, about our journeys, about the complexity of children's identities, and using Read Alouds to help us navigate that as teachers.
You see me smiling, I'm shaking my head, I'm nodding, I'm just like so excited to share the work of my colleagues and co-conspirators, if you would, from the Educator Collaborative. And also just, again, I think it's another opportunity to think about the way that we are all growing in this, in this community of learners through Read Alouds, whether it's the text that we read individually or the text that we share, and professional texts really are part of that in our work, right? For educators, that we're thinking about what are the texts that we're reading that are getting us to think more deeply around this work, whether it be about Read Alouds or anything we do, because that's part of our responsibility. We're never done learning, right? So I'm super excited about many of the ideas that my colleagues have shared, that I have shared, that we'll continue to share together. And I just want to leave you with a few ideas because, as I mentioned, this work is something that is ongoing, and the power of Read Alouds is not about one story. It's about ongoing, it's about finding and searching and researching stories. So rather than leave you with just titles, I want you to think about some of the places that I go to, and that's a picture of myself with my colleague, Julia Torres. We talk often about, where we go when we're looking for books. And so there's a variety of resources that you'll see that you can find and have access to through this presentation and some of the resources, and also thinking about not just the places for us as educators, but for our kids to provide access to. So hopefully we'll be able to experiment more, and you'll be able to experiment more on your own about virtual libraries, but also engaging community and family in this conversation. So how can we use some of the resources that are provided for free through our library, or perhaps, the First Book Marketplace, which has some wonderful opportunities for very, very inexpensive books and family resources, or, you know, just Tumble Book, which is free, or Epic Books, which is free. I try to give everything free. Flipster, where you can have access to magazines, Hoopla for movies, because remember, in the tech sets, it's not just about individual books. And so reading aloud is reading the world. And when we think about reading the world, we want to continue these conversations, and we want to think about some books that are going to really, I hope, continue to lift the level of our work around read aloud. So not just, you know, En Comunidad or Read the World, which I mentioned, but books like Cultivating Genius by Goldie Mohammed, or a new book by one of my colleagues from Northern Parkway, Dr. Bilal Posin and his team. They put a book together with the concepts and really the practices, what it looks like towards culturally sustaining teaching. And there's some great examples in there, as well as many examples in my own book, Layers of Learning, which I hope I've, you know, given you enough of a glimpse into. And if you do want to know more, there's plenty of opportunities to connect with me and find out more. Layers of Learning at Stenhouse. There's tons of resources. Again, I'd love for you to share with me the ways that you're using Read Aloud, the layers of learning, your life layers, your literacy snapshots. And, you know, I might ask you again, what are your beliefs about Read Alouds? In what ways might you lift the level of your conversations? I hope I've inspired you with some ideas. I hope that you can stay connected. I hope that you'll check out the book, and please keep in touch. And please remember the power of a story. Research your kids, invest in books, and invest in kids. Thank you so much. Stay safe, and let's all stay connected. Be well. Bye, everybody.